Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Friday football feast at the State Fair. I'm Paul Allen, joined by Feast co-host Paul Charch, and the producer is Eric Nordquist, and Max Fuller guides the great ship Love Covenant at FM 100.3 KFAN and from the 651 Carpets Plus studios. This is the final 9 to noon show at the State Fair, and whether it's working the fair, hanging out at the fair, thinking about the fair, or negotiating the fairgrounds, can we leave with a favorite thing from the Minnesota State Fair? When you think Minnesota State Fair, you first, Charch, what's a favorite thing you think of?
Well, for me, and this is very specific to me, and I might not relate to a lot of other people, but when we do Fantasy Football Weekly from the fair, which we will do tomorrow, we have our listener mock draft where we pull people out of the stand, put them in a big line, and they take turns making their picks through the first 2 rounds of the draft. And that's always a highlight for me. And people plan around it. They bring their kids out if they want their kid to be in it. And it's just a lot of fun. And I just like, and all the chatting with the people and on the breaks, and they're coming up and we're talking fantasy and handing out cheat sheets. And just, I love the back and forth with all the people. And
what about you, the Nords?
Well, I love our great NFC North debate. So specifically from a show standpoint, I love the debate every single year. You guys yell at each other. I get the chance to sit out in the crowd and rip all of you guys and talk trash. And of course, this year was especially awesome with Jason Hatch, an elite Lions fan, stepping up to the mic and hitting a home run. But otherwise, it's hanging out, meeting people, eating new foods. Cafe Caribe always sees me once or twice for a couple of pints.
What do you get
each
there?
And every fair? It's beer, Charch.
Yeah, I understand. It's a pint. I get it. There's a lot of variations of beer.
There is, whether it's
cafe and I get beer. You hear cafe, you think food.
Well, I as you look at me, you know I'm a guy that likes to count my calories, so definitely sticking to the lighter beers, the lagers, if you will. But I'll mix in a few IPAs, just tasting and walking amongst people. I love the chance to do that every year.
Yep, I love, and I saw it again today with no fewer than 5 people walking in 7:25, 7:30, 7:35, whatever it is, and just seeing people smash Pronto Pops at 7:30 in the morning.
Right.
It is of the fair. I mean, it's not a yearly thing, I would imagine. But double fisted with the Pronto Pups at 7:30, 7:40 in the morning. That's always a treat. Other side of it. Least favorite thing about this year's fair or the fair, the Charchy?
Well, you know what I'm going to say.
What?
Every one
parking?
of these is a battle with the traffic and parking and trying to make sure we're here for the start of the show, which at least once out of the 4 shows that I will do here, I will end up being late to.
Jeez.
And it's the anxiety level. It's my busiest week of the year. 2 weeks of the year is the same 2 weeks of the fair. And so adding all the anxiety of a trip in, which if everything goes perfect from Plymouth is only about 70 or 80 minutes. But if things go badly, we're in the 2.5 hour loop to get in. And you can't always know when. Nordo and I were talking about this. If it all flips in 1 minute. If you're early enough by 1 minute, you breeze right in that hour time frame. 1 minute later, it's a 2 hour time frame or more. And that's just the anxiety of that to me. Once I get here, I'm great and good to go.
Nordo. 7 for 7, 9 to noon.
7 for 7.
Oh, wait a second. No, you had consternation the first day. But still 7 for 7.
That's pretty good.
I mean, we didn't get clipped at all by Como. We didn't get stopped by Snelling. No, we went 7 for 7.
Yes, we did.
Avoiding significant traffic, anxiety, consternation, and/or angst trying to get into this bad boy.
Well done.
Beautiful.
Well, nobody appreciates that more than me. That's dedication.
I'm leaving between 6:35 and 6:55 every single morning.
Yeah.
And that was the key.
And that was the key to it. Now, I don't want anybody who listens to this show, listens to our station, I don't want anybody to feel bad for us. And as it pertains to the traffic clomp, but we do have a job in which of the few things that are expected of us.
Be here on time.
That's one of the few things that you absolutely have to do in the industry, Charch.
Yes, sir.
Is just be on time.
Yes.
So we don't get to pause 9 to noon and wait for the public lot to allow some of us and get the Bentley parked, and it's got to be double parked so there are no door dings. We understand the trials and tribulations of the Charch, but it is. I would have to say, actually, at this point, don't be on time, Charch. I think the first Friday
messes
of the
with
fair,
the bid.
Correct. You have to be late now. So no excuses. You intentionally leave home late and get here around 10. It's all good.
You listening to 9 to noon while we talk about you yearly? I mean, it's a yearly occasion, so you can't mess that up, Charchy.
It's so hard on me. You don't know. Because I want to be there. I feel bad I'm not there. You're mocking me over the 100,000 watts of radio, and there's nothing I can do. I am locked in behind some Kia, and nothing's moving.
Do you have a least?
Well, for me, ultimately just being out of the comfort zone and that sort of thing in terms of what we do. But the only thing that I would say my least favorite part about the fair is just you have no control over the weather, right? So Monday, I'm built for climate-controlled areas.
Come on, man.
And Monday, when I'm just standing here and I'm absolutely soaked, and thank goodness the Culligan man was the MVP of this fair here with the water machine behind us.
Yeah.
But when you... If you can put a layer on, it's a little breezy. It's absolutely gorgeous on a Friday morning here at the fair. I love that.
It's shaping up as a beautiful day.
But nobody wants to see me layer down. and when it's so hot, you can't control it. You just got to, I think that's part of the fair. We come to accept people, and we see all kinds of different people, elite people watching.
Yeah.
There are certain days where we just got to understand each other's sweat stains and just deal with it. We know it's part of the heat and part of the fair.
Are you going to peel off that shirt at some point?
No, today I might have to. I got to grab a free sweatshirt here in a little
maybe
bit.
That's it. Do you guys pilfer? I've never once in the 20 whatever years we've been out. I have never once taken any apparel. Am I the only one not stealing from the station?
Have you asked?
The wrong word.
Have you asked?
No, I haven't asked.
Okay.
I assumed if it was okay, somebody would tell me.
The old assumption card.
Well, yeah, but it's stealing. I'm not going to assume I can steal.
You can ask, and I'm sure you will receive.
You're familiar with Barb, right?
I know Barb.
Right.
So you ask Barb.
I think Barb's still a little bitter about her password beatdown, and she's going to say no.
Fair point.
That's my worry.
And that's why you got a public lot pass.
Should have tanked that. And I got the public lot pass instead of the media lot pass. That's funny how that all came around.
People looking at their phones or looking at something like staring up into the sky while walking what's up, buddy? While negotiating the streets or sideways. Or sidewalks of the Great Minnesota Get-Together is a good way to collide with somebody and lose $100 of quality fair cuisine. And I've seen it happen. So that's probably my least favorite thing every year is people looking at their phones, walking around when it's crowded. And you got, you got Martha and Ethel and Herbert carrying around all these cookies and these Pronto Pups and these big bacon things and everything. And somebody's looking at their phone, walking around, and they bump them and like $100 in quality fair cuisine topples to its concrete doom.
Well, the Sweet Martha Leaning Tower of Cookie thing, it's a hazard waiting to happen. I mean, and God bless him for piling them on the top, right?
Yeah.
And it makes you feel like, they're only ever going to give you X number of cookies, but because they put it in a container that's purposely too small and they overfill it, your brain looks at it and goes, oh, I'm getting so much more than I bargained for.
Right.
You're a walking advertisement.
You are a walking advertisement. And then if you are walking with your phone and the Sweet Martha, then it's cookies down for sure. And if you look around at the food that has been stamped into the concrete of various places here, 9 times out of 10, it's a Sweet Martha cookie.
No, walking in here today, I had to dodge some cold cuts that had into the concrete. I hope it was cold cuts.
What else could it have been?
Not a half-digested something else. I'm just not in favor of walking and eating in general.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. I want to sit down on a bench and really savor the flavor.
That's connoisseur-like statement.
I don't want to focus. I'm simultaneously respecting other people because I'm getting out of people's way.
Understood.
But then if I'm going to spend $40 on something, I need to dig in.
Sit back and enjoy.
Oh, absolutely. Brace myself.
Golden Gophers football debuted on KFAN last night.
Oh, my.
Speaking of bracing yourself.
Brace yourselves for this. Golden Gophers football takes an L.
Sorry, KFAN.
to the UNC Tar Heels in a spine tingler. There was a missed field goal from 47 yards at the buzzer. PJ Fleck is now 21-3 versus non-conference opponents, 0-2 against North Carolina. We lost 19-17, and the new quarterback, Max Brosmer, would be the A topic because he's the quarterback and he's going to be the quarterback for the rest of the year.
And he made his debut.
Right, and he steadily improved during the course of the game, making his FBS debut for Sky Yuma. I don't know about you guys. Now, I was in and out while calling races last night, but played Covenant catch-up when I got home and watched the entire half the third quarter, the entire fourth quarter. Is the team went 4 of 12 on third down. All right, and it took a little while to look this up this morning, and hopefully I'm not wrong with it. I think their average down in distance on third down was like 3rd and 8, like 3rd and like 7.8 or something like that. So that's a remedy for disaster. There were a lot of missed tackles. No, way too many missed tackles. Kicker missed a couple of kicks. They definitely needed one.
That shorty early really hurt.
Took that L by 2 points last night, boys.
Well, I've got a few thoughts on this. I thought Max Brosmer looked okay. And definitely, to your point, looked better as the game got in. And that's totally fair, right? His first ever game as a Gopher, I can understand where he was going to need to acclimate a little bit, get the nerves down. He sailed some early passes, which is a sign of nervousness. And I thought he settled in okay. The pass blocking was not good for a lot of this game. He was under duress quite a bit. He didn't have a comfortable pocket very often. I did like what I saw from Marcus Major, the Oklahoma kid. I thought he showed some wiggle, showed some move, a little burst. That looked promising. And I thought the run blocking was particularly good as well. And the defense overall, you noted some missed tackles, which was true, but overall you held UNC to 19 points. That was a good effort by a defense that I thought on the whole played pretty well, particularly in the secondary.
Brad Johnson, former quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings, his son Max Johnson was the starting quarterback for the North Carolina Tar Heels. And sadly for Max, it was a very, very sad situation where he got knocked out of the game. Looks like an ACL or something like that. The ESPN cameras cut to Brad and the family and everything, and they were super sad.
Mom's crying and Brad's just
he was crying,
off.
right?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
right.
Now they had cut to the family many times. Do you think in that moment TV should cut to the parents when your kid is down and getting carted off?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
Okay, what about you?
I don't. I mean, if we've seen it at times where you rely on that. That's a constant go-to, and it was clear that into the game, Max Johnson in Minnesota, son of Brad Johnson, that was a huge part of the TV production.
Yeah, it was, for sure.
But ultimately, once you go down that road, he was going to be a talker as a new kid, new school, the whole thing. They had to show at least.
I don't know. I was just a little uncomfortable because I guess in my mind, maybe I need to stop making the distinction between professional athletes and college kids because increasingly they are professional athletes, but they still feel like kids to me. And it's still a parent who's in that moment, going through all the horrible things in your mind that, could have happened. And I understand that's really good television to see the parent in that moment, but there's part of me as a parent that sort of wants to protect that relationship, and I don't necessarily love while your kid's writhing on the ground that you cut to the parents to show their anguish. It feels a little bit cheap, and it doesn't necessarily feel, appropriate or respectful.
Well, it was super authentic.
I understand.
It is authentic, I know, and that's why they want to capture it.
But I think in some ways,
appropriate.
Don't you think maybe they're protecting Max in some ways? I'm showing the parents adjusting to it. Ex-NFL player dad who's had knee issues, and you could see he knows exactly what just happened to his kid.
Yeah.
There's the emotional element to that. I think that's better than just zooming in on Max Johnson, who's probably crying in complete anguish on the field if we're talking about kid versus parent. Now, I'm putting that in an either-or situation. Maybe they don't zoom in on either one, but I think that the authenticity of it, I think, was worth at least showing.
Now, from a game standpoint, not knowing really anything about the North Carolina Tar Heels except for what we did with Covenant catch-ups this week, learning about the quarterbacks and nice running back, as we talked about yesterday, very fast running back. They have a nice receiver, too, named McCullum. Very sloppy game by PJ's team. It was a sloppy game on both sides. However, and I've written this name down in a separate spot, spot. I started like a combine folder for next year. North Carolina has a player that I absolutely hope the Minnesota Vikings are interested in. It was number 5. His name is Jahvaree Ritzie.
The trio of sacks last night.
Rob, I mean, he's a 6'4", 250, 255 defensive end. I went through like 5 draft websites just to kind of get a common thread as to where people now think he'll be drafted. Seems like a Friday draft pick, so it seems like second, high second, some type of third round pick. He's a 4.7 40 guy. At least he was in high school. That's not super fast, but I think he's a defensive end, which means it's not bad. But that guy's on my radar, man. I mean, he was absolutely monstrous in that game last night. So Jahvaree Ritzie, we're already thinking 2025 draft for the Minnesota Vikings. And after texting with you last night, Nordo, because I didn't watch the early stages, and I'm glad you did, with Max Brosmer, the new Golden Gophers quarterback here from FCS, New Hampshire. Big step for this young man. When I tuned in, none of the passes were on time. It's like receivers were having to reach behind them, reach down by their knees. He was misfiring, which, you know, when you're gifted enough to play as a starting quarterback in the Big Ten, and this kid does belong. Well, the gifts are there, but he just can't get to them for whatever the reason in the early stages, which indicates to me he's probably nervous. And he's probably fighting through some anxiety of what's happening to this part of his life is a major, major step. But right after we texted, man, and you made some good points, that kid settled in pretty nicely and started to sell some hope.
Yeah, and to the way Charch put it, he evolved over the course of the game. He was better towards the end than he was at the beginning. You did see several moments. There were a couple in the red zone where he had time. He was protected. Ritzie was not ruining the play.
Yeah.
And you could tell he was throwing it off time because the receiver was falling away to it. He's expecting it in a turn in the end zone. And there just wasn't good connectivity there. Later in the game, brutal fumble. Lost fumble by Brosmer. So you didn't like that.
Nope.
But he did look like he grew in comfort throughout the game. To Charch's point, if this offensive line is truly, as it's been talked about into the season, one of the elite strengths of this team, they're in trouble.
Right.
Once big, I mean, the Ritzies are going to come in bigger numbers as the Big Ten season unfolds. Go and beat up on Rhode Island next week and feel better about yourself. But the O-line absolutely needs to be better. Comfort level of him, I guess I didn't know.
Great way to put it, needs to be better, because I can't watch it back and say it was bad. I mean, like, for the whole game.
For the total, it was the consistency of it.
Individuals would make mistakes. There was a penalty that was a little dicey, but it was a penalty that nullified a longer play. But you hit on it, man. I mean, because just the conversations we've had this week about Golden Gophers football is well, first games when you have new coordinators. All right, so North Carolina has a new defensive coordinator, but the Golden Gophers, they have 4 returning starters on the offensive line, but a new quarterback. And first games quite frequently can be coaches' games, because you don't really know what's coming, specifically when you have a new coordinator. And there were just so many things that North Carolina's front seven was doing that just kept our guys just a beat off or 2 beats off. And if there truly are 3 guys on that offensive line who are going to be drafted next year, including one potentially in the first, maybe early second round, it will get better as the season goes on, I would imagine.
I think so.
But this new defensive coordinator for North Carolina, I don't even know what his name is, my man did a really good job last night of keeping that whole operation off balance.
He did. So learning from that, I will say, as a complete side note, their kicker, Noah Burnett,
apparently
he's going to be in the NFL.
Apparently he's great.
He's an NFL kicker.
Yeah.
That was, I think, all 4 of his field goals were 40-plus.
The last one that they had to have to get the win, I mean, I would have bet $200 when that left his foot, it was going to miss right.
Yeah.
But now, my man is so in control with the hooks and the fades and just everything that the highest of high-end kickers can do. That sucker was going to go right, and it hooks right. It wasn't close. I mean, it made it by a mile, but it looked like it was going to be off, but he had a hook on it, and it was just technically beautiful.
He's going to be an NFL player, Charch. Now, as we were talking, you enjoyed Marcus Major.
Yeah.
But we need Darius Taylor back.
Yeah,
that duo, I think, because when we go down the line of Brosmer, kind of the simplicity of just you need more out of that position than you got a year ago. This is a team that if you have both Taylor and Major rolling,
right,
that's going to be a 40-carry operation. And despite the efficiency at times, they still, I think they had maybe, I don't have in front of me, 80-some yards total in rushing. And so,
what's up, Katie Bug?
So ultimately, when you're trying to teach that quarterback on the fly, in the same vein that you might talk about the Vikings, and let's get Aaron Jones in the mix as Sam Darnold weaves his way through this season, you need Darius Taylor back and help out Mr. Brosmer.
So let me ask you this: Darius Taylor, is he good for the 3 points the Gophers would have needed to win this game?
It's tough. That's tough to answer.
It is tough. It's hypothetical, but nevertheless.
Kasich from 27 yards should be good enough for 3 points.
You would think so, too.
West side of that end zone, 27-yard kicks. They've been difficult over the course of time.
Or maybe he helps. Maybe Taylor helps make
the answer is yes, because he's their best running back.
He is.
So he knows, like, if main man Major, he's the backup for a reason. Maybe it's missing some holes. Maybe his pass protection is not as good as Taylor's. I would have no idea. But if you're the starting back and you're the one on whom they're going to count, then at least the coach believes you're inherently better, which would give you a better chance to win.
And maybe it's just simple things like a few more first downs, and maybe that final kick isn't from 47. It's from 37.
Yeah, see, they look super fluid at the end of the first half. I just thought they looked really squared away and fluid. And on that last drive of the game. I mean, Brosmer with the gritty run to get the first down, and then they're in hurry-up mode and stuff like that. So, I mean, there were positives out of the game.
I think the key to that, as you're talking about it, because you mentioned it, defense, you allow 19 points. You should be able to get out alive.
Yeah.
Yep.
And all of that.
North Carolina's, with all due respect, their quarterback situation is problematic.
Well,
it's problematic.
And prior to the injury, it's tough.
Yeah.
Because his season's likely over. Max Johnson did not look like he was en route to winning that game.
You saw the stats. The 28 yards at halftime was the lowest halftime yardage passing total in the history of UNC football.
I did not see that.
I believe that was the stat.
And that's, of course, the laundry list of great quarterbacks that have come through the University of North Carolina historically.
Not a ton, but...
But to that end, so the defense holds up. You look at the final score and you say 19 points. We should be able to get out alive with that, make the kick early on, and you're good.
They had them right where they were supposed to be to win the game.
But the Gophers defense also, North Carolina possessed the ball for like 13 and a half minutes of the third quarter.
Oh, yeah.
And then they had that long drive in the fourth as well.
Yep.
I mean, the
defense was on the field for 14 of like the first 17 minutes of the second half.
Yeah, and that's absolutely catastrophic. So you look at the box score and you're like 19 points, well done. But there are other aspects of where when they got that Hampton cat rolling and they needed points, they found their way to points, and the defense could not find a way to stop or get off the field, which limit the opportunities of Brosmer in this offense. And you're going to find your way in a spot where you're trying to make a 47-yarder to ice it.
Meanwhile, 9 to noon this day next week is at Buffalo Wild Wings Oakdale for the first Friday football feast. So make plans for that. Into the Giants game, the season opener, the lid lifter. And that's next week this day, next Friday for the football feast at Buffalo Wild Wings Oakdale.
Does Charch like the drive to the fair or the drive to Oakdale every year? Which one creates
more anxiety?
We get big crowds at the feast, but not like the state fair.
Not even close.
I don't know. Oakdale, the first one of the year, is always Oakdale, and it is always it's always packed.
It's a party.
There's a couple hundred people in there. It is a party. It rivals the group. By the time we get off the air and more people at the fair, it's good. There's probably going to be something about the same here, but at least for right now, I think Buffalo Wild Wings Oakdale.
Listeners, it's so impressive. Like, even after Thursday night games, right? You're reacting versus previewing.
Yeah,
they'll fill up the B-dubs.
Yeah,
they'll fit wherever you guys go. They find their way there. That's awesome. First East in Oakdale.
The dedication is unbelievable. The people that show up at 6:45 so they can get the primo tables up front when the doors open at 8 and we go on the air at 9. That's it's unbelievable. People that burn PTO because they want to come see a Friday football feast and they want to have a few drinks before lunchtime.
Well, that's the key. Is PA's talking about pronto pups at 7:30 in the morning. I see some people in the grandstands with beverages at 9:24 in the morning.
That's right.
The Friday feast is a little bit like the fair. Who's eating boneless wings and beers at 8:30 in the morning anywhere else than during a feast?
All right. To the NFL. Quick twitch. This day next week, we will have a result from a National Football League game. The first game is next Thursday. It's Baltimore at Kansas City. What are we thinking about those teams into the 2024? Ravens and Chiefs, the Birch.
There's going to be these teams played each other 2 games ago. AFC Championship game. These teams played each other, and weather was not a factor, even though it was late January at that point. Mm-hmm. And it ended up being a very low-scoring game, I think like 17-10, as memory serves. There's a lot of fun storylines that we're going to be talking about. Derrick Henry will have made his Ravens debut.
Yeah.
That's going to be wild to see that.
Do you love him in fantasy?
I was originally pretty cautious. I've warmed up a lot because of the improved offensive line and just knowing how much the Ravens still run the ball. Even after Greg Roman's been gone, this is still the identity of Ravens football is still largely around running.
Yeah.
And honestly, he's better than Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins and the guys they were trying to muddle through last year. So, yeah.
And he's also better than Latavius, who was running for the Ravens recently.
Yeah, it's amazing. Is Latavius back in the league?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
And I kind of think you just wanted to do Latavius, which is always good.
And a week from today, we have NFL game number 2.
Yeah.
It's the Green Bay Packers against the Philadelphia Eagles from Brazil. Quick twitch. What do you boys think about the Packers and the old Eagles?
So the Eagles at one point, and it's a little bit hard to remember now, but rolling into, I believe, week 10, they were undefeated, and it looked like a freaking juggernaut and clearly the best team in the league, and then the wheels just came off.
And they started 10-1 maybe?
And maybe 10-1.
Yeah, lost 4 or 5 or something like that.
Yep, they had a bad loss to the Zach Wilson-led Jets, and just, everything just unfurled. They fired both of their coordinators. Nick Sirianni, absolutely on the hot seat here. And a lot of people feel like now you bring in Kellen Moore as your new offensive coordinator, so you've got a lot more experience and presumably competence than they had before.
He's coordinated 2 number 1 offenses, Charch.
He has. This is so the presumption is that this is going to be a better offense. And very, very interested to see what Jordan Love does as now the highest paid quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
And, for a guy who's got a very short resume, is there more pressure now? Is he okay with that pressure? How are they going to handle the 4 emerging wideouts that they've got for the Packers? What's Josh Jacobs going to look like in that offense? He's going to need to run the ball a lot in that game. The A.J. Dillon went on IR, and the guy behind Jacobs,
Marshawn
Lloyd, he's hurt, and his status for this game is not clear. It looks like he probably won't play. So you're going to see a lot of Josh Jacobs in this one.
The Minnesota Vikings debut a week from Sunday at MetLife Stadium against the New York Giants. And given we're here in front of a bunch of people at the State Fair, we have some Vikings quick twitch thoughts into the regular season. And segment number 1, final radio show at the State Fair for this year for 9 to noon is in the air. And when we return, segments 2 and 3, all right, 3-2. That's coming up around the corner with Vikes Bites. He's Paul Charchi, and I'm Paul Allen. This is the Friday Football Feast at FM 100.3 KFAN. Welcome to the State Fair.
Yes. Celebrate 30 years of Weezer's iconic Blue album when they take the stage at XL Energy Center on Wednesday, September 4th. Don't miss out as they play all of the hits, including the Blue album in full with special guests The Flaming Lips and Dinosaur Jr. Tickets are still available. Head over to KFAN.com, keyword calendar for more info.
Welcome back. It's a Friday feast, 9 to noon, PA and Charch. And it is time for Vikes Bites.
Oh, it's Vikes Bites.
It's Vikes Bites.
All right.
And it's brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. Go to thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com. And you can buy the meat online. A big box of it shows up at your doorstep. That's pretty sweet. You can go to your local co-ops, your local Coburn's locations as well. It's a Clearwater, Minnesota-based company. We love you, Thousand Hills. I'm going to start simply enough, just 10,000-foot view, Charch.
Yeah.
Was there anything that popped for you on the final 53? As, names in,
yes.
Names out, and some things that, of course, transpired over the last couple of days. What do you love, or maybe some things that piqued your interest on the final 53?
Maybe my single biggest takeaway that I got out of the whole training camp preseason was really wasn't clear what was going to happen in the depth chart at wide receiver beyond Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. And
yeah.
I liked what I saw from a lot of these receivers. Jalen Naylor separated himself from the pack, and good for him. The promise had been there for a long time, and you'd heard coaches talk glowingly of him prior to now. It was great to see it on the field. We know what Brandon Powell can do as utility guy. And Tristan Jackson and Trent Sherfield look like, periodic contributors. I thought that was great.
Well, the key for me with Tristan Jackson, since you brought him up, is it's kind of fun once in a while. And ultimately, Vikings fans, we're thinking about JJ, right? We're thinking about Jefferson and Addison, Hawkinson when he gets healthy.
Yeah.
But I do love kind of the idea of once in a while you see a player make himself uncuttable.
Yeah.
And I think Tristan Jackson was kind of that guy. I
love how you frame that.
In a spot where ultimately you're dead on, I think Naylor is absolutely that third wide receiver. So finally healthy, taking advantage of a spot. Similarly, Jackson, always going to be on the border. And he made himself uncuttable. And I just like seeing those stories develop.
And then, of course, you can't talk about the 53, I think, without Lewis Scene's situation, that they ultimately cut him.
Yeah.
And it was a move that many people thought was going to happen. It seemed like there were enough splash plays in the preseason to add a little bit of drama to whether or not that would happen.
Right.
But ultimately it didn't. Kwesi said, we tried to fix too many things at once. I might have been guilty of trying to have a 33-point play all at once, talking about the drafting of Lewis Scene, which I guess there's a way to...
is it the drafting in combination with the maneuvering, like the trading back to acquire the extra pick? I think that's exactly
what he was talking about. But, I'll say this. Okay. And he was new to the job. He wanted to address a lot of things. And nobody expected perfection in year one. But the team also ended up going 13-3 that year. It wasn't like he needed to fix 1,000 leaking holes in the roster. It was good enough to go 13-3, as it turned out. And so it's sad that it ended this way. I think we all wanted things to work out better for Lewis. We'll never know how much the injury changed the trajectory of his career. But notable that happened, and I don't think you can talk about the 53 without mentioning Lewis Scene and the end of that era, if you will.
Kene Nwanwu is not part of the 53, rolling with two backs.
How about this?
There was kind of a confusing, and he ultimately, and we can get to what happened, he goes to the Saints, and now there's another thing in relation to Nwanwu. But I'm having trouble understanding this. So they signed Myles Gaskin to the practice squad.
Yep.
And then there was some interesting quotes, let me find it here, that basically they envision, and KOC talked about this, he's more of a three-down back. And PA hit on this, is the functionality of him as a running back. He's just a better pure running back. And so all the things associated with that, pass protection might be part of that conversation if we're using the three-down aspect of it. But I think Kwesi floated the idea of him being a kick returner this year. But you got to be on the 53 to be
you have to be
that.
It's going to be hard if you're not.
So maybe this thing isn't completely finished, but Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, I was seeing it on social media yesterday. I didn't hear the pressers themselves. The idea that Myles Gaskin would be an option at kick returner, despite currently being on the practice squad. So all of that kind of confused me.
Well, the consensus from many around the NFL into the season about the style or body type of returner that's going to be required is that of a running back. So I've just heard that and or read that a million times now. And Myles is a running back. So maybe Kwesi, tipped the hand a little bit on something, but like Nordo said, he's on the practice squad. I'm very intrigued by by who the kick returners are going to be here because I think Jalen Naylor fits the role really well. Brandon Powell fits the role really well, as does Ty Chandler. Ty Chandler, but he's your backup running back, you know.
And he's been the name, if you look at it's not the team's official depth chart, but whether it's ESPN or Our Lads is a depth chart site that I use regularly.
Yeah.
Ty Chandler has been listed as the number one kick returner on both those sites.
But the thing is the decisions that special teams coordinators are going to start making are going to shape games because you're going to have coordinators who are going to do their very best to just kick it out of the end zone, force touchbacks, go ahead and start at the 30. Then you're going to, and if you have one of the NFL's 5 to 8 best defenses, then that's probably what you should do, with discretion being the better part of valor, is just let them start at the 30. We believe over the course of time, we will stop you every single time, and you'll get a field goal at best. But not everybody's going to take that approach. And you know, I fully believe the approach taken here by Matt Daniels, who has a little swashbuckle to him as a special teams coordinator, is this kicker, Will Reichert, is so good at angling the ball, aiming the ball, and putting it in this newfangled landing zone in pretty much the exact spot they want, that it's going to be a here, kitty, kitty, and they're going to try to suck them into returns and stop them inside the 20, preferably inside the 15. So there will be games that will be decided early in the season by kick returns because all special teams coordinators are hiding everything that they've seen from the XFL. For instance, like in the Browns game, all right? Bo Richter, who's on the practice squad, he was put in a position to the left of the kick formation that I believe will be manned by Josh Metellus. Now, that's maybe the most important spot on the kick coverage. But we're going to put Bo in there and see what happens. Now, Bo lined up, you know, there were a couple of penalties. He lined up wrong a couple of times, or something happened where it was illegal formation. So the tell there is that's a key spot, you know, because it's a key spot because of how it's handled by the players coming at you. So he tried to get off a little quick or something like that. So that we will figure out which spots are key. But, you know, there are times that I've just seen in practice where, you know, they're running plays and they're doubling guys at the point of attack and they're trapping guys a little farther down the field. So it's like a double, get the hole, then 2 other guys have somebody trapped, and then you get the sideline and you're gone. I think the majority of the kick returns that get to the house will be by the sideline. I don't think they'll be middle of the field. And finally, you know, a lot of this is predicated on player safety. And I mentioned this a little bit last week, and I'm spitballing here, and hopefully I'm wrong, but I've just seen some things and watching a lot of kick returns around the NFL in the preseason where what's known as an ear hole. Did I bring it up last week with you?
Yeah, we talked about it last week.
Where there are players in unexpected fashion. Just they're not running and looking around. They're kind of standing there. And here come guys on the kick coverage team who just smack you. And they get ear holed. And I think it's going to lead to some injuries the NFL may not see coming now.
I disagree just because the players are so close to each other. They don't have the running head start and they don't have the velocity.
It involves in a player being engaged in a block so he can't move. And then somebody trying to open a hole and just coming at him legally and smacking him.
Yeah, and we'll find out. Let's hope the whole change is predicated on player safety. Let's hope it does not blow up that way. I don't think special teams coaches are going to be able to resist the temptation to play with this.
Yeah.
I don't think they're just going to boot it into the end zone. I think they want to show the world that they've got an angle, that they're going to figure this out, or the opposition's going to figure this out. They're going to want to play with it and monkey with it, and I think they're going to want to have fun with it, and they're going to want to look like the smartest guy in the room. Wow. And I think you're not going to see a lot of kicks out of the end zone most of the time while they're figuring this out.
Just conceding the 5 yards. I kind of lean towards more touchbacks. And I would disagree with the physical part of it. I like the idea of mistakes being made. If someone is trying to earhole somebody, that there's going to be some holes and there's going to be some massive plays that come out of it. I do have...
We'll see.
What we should do is pause. I got one more Vike Bite to get your opinion, Charch, and then I have some NFL wide bits that I wanted to hit you with as well. Vikes Bites brought to you by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed, grass-fed beef, and Thousand Hills.
And we do all of that around the corner from the Great Minnesota Get-Together on a beautiful Friday in Falcon Heights. You're listening to 9 to Noon.
Come join us at the 2024 Minnesota State Fair live from Carousel Park, presented by Mesh, Besher, and Spence. We will be broadcasting live through Labor Day. Come buy your favorite fan merch and learn about your shot to be the Mesh, Besher, and Spence Rube of the Day and win a prize pack. Get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
A Vike Bite carryover provided by
Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed, grass-fed beef. Saw this from Ben Gessling yesterday. Last segment, we were talking about not only the head coach, but the general manager addressing the media. And Kwesi says that the Vikings are going to try and bring Jaron Hall back. So yesterday, you saw the news, Brett Rippon was signed to the Minnesota Vikings.
I was a little surprised.
And Jaron Hall was waived. And there were no injury designations or anything of the sort.
No.
And here's what he said, Kwesi, adding Brett to the room, we feel good about this decision, but it also gives us more time to pour into Jaron. So the idea is if Jaron clears waivers, they want to put him back on the practice squad. So
and I believe he did clear waivers.
So the combo of what Kwesi said, in addition to KOC, because KOC's quote I don't have in front of me, but it was kind of like, Brett's more ready now, but we don't want to abandon Jaron. Now, I feel like we've talked more about the third QB situation than we have.
But we rattled through 4 last year. I mean, we're just getting ready, you know, just in case.
Exactly. So it's not necessarily the most riveting. It just happened to be really vital to the operation a year ago. Any thoughts on not giving up on Jaron, the third QB bit? It's more of a Vike morsel than it is a full bite.
I'm still surprised they kept a third. And it's, if you look back last year, it was a dead split, 26-26. 26 kept 3, 26 kept 2. And I thought we would keep 2. If you're not going to keep Hall, and I didn't think Hall would make the active roster in the first place, and he did. But if you get down to your third quarterback, you're probably in peril in the first place. And the big horse is in the barn repairing the meniscus, so you know what's next. And you like what you have now in Darnold. At least they like what they have, and then we'll start playing the games. I like him too. But yeah, so I don't, I just think a lot of thoughts being put into this old active third quarterback situation.
I thought I didn't love what I saw from Hall last year. I was pretty skeptical about his situation coming into this year, but I thought he played a lot better in the preseason.
Right.
I was like, that's a kid who got better.
Yeah.
So maybe this thing still has a little bit of drama left to it, and ultimately I didn't think he would make the cut. I would not have been shocked if it turned out they did. But the move for Rippon is, I think, just because Rippon's got more reps, he's got more pro experience, he's started games, and he probably is a little bit more pro ready. And you don't always have the luxury of taking a guy along on a slow developmental path, even if you want to, and it's part of the nature of only having 53.
Well, yeah, the rule change that took place earlier this week is key. Where last year you were able to have Jaron Hall on the practice squad all week, then you designate by Saturday, I think 3 Central, the player, the quarterback, if he's going to be the emergency 3.
Right.
When the Vikings played at the Chicago Bears last year, their backup quarterback for most of the season had been a guy named Nathan Peterman. Tyson Bagent was their 3. But for whatever the reason, they didn't activate Peterman. Okay, they didn't take advantage of the roster spot for Peterman, and they got stuck with Bagent. And it was Bagent's first game. Now he's gotten pretty good, actually.
Yeah, he was shockingly good in that game.
But so with that rule change where you just can't elevate somebody and not cost yourself a roster spot over the weekend, that's key in this equation too.
I only saw the headline for this, and I don't know why. The NFLPA is the one that nuked that rule.
I know.
And I don't understand why.
Yeah, me either.
Why would the NFLPA have not want to give the players this option to come in? I don't get it.
I don't know, maybe the protection of the player, the ability to force a team if you're going to you got to keep them on a 53, which then potentially doesn't keep a player captive on the practice squad.
Oh, so maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe that's it.
No, I think he nailed it. Practice squad rules are different than they used to be. For instance, Myles Gaskin's like a 6-year pro.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there were times he would not be eligible for the practice squad, depending on games played, stuff like that. Well, now you are. So
and that was a COVID change too, I think.
It was.
I think it was.
The NFL Players Association is I mean, clearly with this move is you're not going to be able to manipulate players and just put them on the practice squad where they make X amount and put them on the active roster where it's like a vested veteran. If they're on the roster week 1, they get paid. They're guaranteed their salary the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Well, they're are vested veterans now on the practice squad.
Yeah.
So it's manipulation of a roster spot that absolutely benefits the team, which is what we're in it for. But from an NFLPA standpoint, they probably are like, no, we got to stop doing that.
Yeah, interesting that it worked that way. I am glad that veterans like Myles Gaskin can still make a practice squad. That was a dumb rule to begin with. The best players should be able to make the practice squad, and you shouldn't age out a 4-year vet from being on the practice squad. That was stupid.
I agree with you. Can I hit you guys with one little NFL nugget?
Yeah.
And then the hair will be here. Anthony LaPanta from Bally's, Vox for your Minnesota Wild's going to be here for the next hour. Brandon Ayuk, we PA and I went through this yesterday. Just kind of things are getting weird and things are getting late early for the Niners trying to get into week 1 with all their big timers. Trent Williams is still holding out for guaranteed cash, but Brandon Ayuk signs a 4-year deal, $120 million, 76 of it is guaranteed. Nearly 50 of it needs to be paid by next April. So there's whoever their Rob Brzezinski has not slept in a week.
Yeah.
He is stuck down Rumpelstiltskin style trying to find some gold coins. What do you think about Brandon Ayuk? Is he a top 10 receiver and getting this done on the eve of midnight effectively into the season? What are your thoughts, Charch?
Yeah, well, he is a good receiver. He's worthy of a significant contract. And when I think he's not a top 10 receiver, but we know how this works. When you are a free agent and you're maybe the 15th best player, you're going to get paid like one of the best players. And, we see with quarterbacks all the time, Jordan Love's our most expensive quarterback. He's not the best quarterback in the NFL. Is he worth that much? Well, probably not, but that's how these things go. And you needed him because, he is a really good player. He's pretty foundational to what they do. They put a first rounder into Ricky Pearsall and they could have just rolled the dice and gone, you know what, we're going to.
He's hurt, though, right?
He is hurt. So short term, it would have been tricky for them. But, yeah, I'm glad it's done.
I'm glad you brought that up. You put the first rounder into Pearsall. That almost tells me that they're anticipating moving on from one of these guys.
Yeah.
Whether it's Ayuk or it's Deebo Samuel. That's a ton of capital to have in that offense that already features Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. Now, Pearsall, let's say there's no injury in the mix. That's your first-round pick, which means he's going to get immediate and, in some ways, unearned natural equity for being a first-rounder. I don't know what they're doing there from a financial standpoint, now committing long-term to Ayuk. And this first-rounder is going to be healthy at some point.
Watch what happens when Brock Purdy needs money and how that works out.
Yep.
He ain't going to get it.
They're planning for that.
Yeah, well, he ain't going to get it. They can find a new Brock Purdy for that offense anywhere in the draft.
Apparently the 7th round.
You see what I'm saying? Is they will, he has the John Lynch, the GM, and the coach Kyle Shanahan, they have to have that in their back pocket, that we can pay McCaffrey this, we can pay Ayuk this, and Bosa this, and so on and so on. And Kittle this, and because, when this, if we don't get a fair deal with this quarterback, and if he tries to break the bank, then we'll just find the next Brock Purdy, which I think they can do.
I mean, there's some hubris involved to saying, oh, well, we'll just find a quarterback wherever we want, and we'll shape him. But, they've earned the right to have some of that hubris. But the bigger story now that nobody's talking about.
Well, they went to the Super Bowl. They've gone to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. So I think the past performances have played themselves out.
They've earned it.
You know?
Trent Williams holding out. Yeah. Trent Williams is arguably the best left tackle in football.
With Brandon, and I hit on this yesterday. Brandon got more money than I thought he would get. I don't think Brandon is as good as Brandon thinks, but I think in that offense, he is an absolute vital piece.
Yes.
Because it's such an A to B to C to D, trick you and catch you off guard kind of offense with physicality. Now, at ProFootballTalk.com with Mike Florio, he wrote something very interesting this morning where it was like, if you had done this in March or April, you probably would have saved yourself X amount millions of dollars. And I do believe that. But today or very soon, the 49ers were going to start fining Brandon Ayuk $48,000 a day. And now, per the collective bargaining agreement, you can't just wipe that money away.
Right.
The player has to pay it. So it's just interesting how, like how Nordo put it, the metaphorical clock struck midnight. We're going to start dinging you this. You're looking, because Brandon absolutely wanted Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb type money. Got close. But so therefore there had to be a compromise, but him getting fined nearly $50,000 a day, potentially beginning, today, I think that played into it too. Trent Williams Trent Williams has enough cash. I ain't going to say he has enough cash, but I would imagine he has a lot of cash.
Old people want guarantees, PA.
And old people don't care about fines.
He doesn't.
Because old guy will say, well, that's cool. I'm just going to retire.
Yeah.
And I feel good about my career and I'll retire and I'll keep myself in shape. Then I'll unretire. And I don't know, come back for the Seattle Seahawks and try to become the next Walter Jones.
Yep.
So you guys want to cut a deal or not? So things like that are happening right now.
He is a very principled guy, Trent Williams. Remember, he held out that whole year in Washington after they messed up his cancer diagnosis.
Yep. What a great call.
He was like, this organization sucks, and I'm not playing for you.
Yeah.
So he is a principled dude, and this could be very protracted with Trent Williams. And if the money they give him and the money they give Ayuk, it comes out of the quarterback position, and it really does force their hand on not extending Purdy, because they've got so many high-dollar players on that roster.
We head back to football in the final hour with some fantasy football-related tidbits and some Vikings conversation that ties to playing the New York Giants. But around the corner, we will mix in the Minnesota Twins, the Minnesota Wild, and much more with play-by-play voice Anthony LaPanta from Bally Sports North. The heir apparent joins us next from the Great Minnesota Get-Together on KFAN.